pests. They exploit the reef as and when it focuses their food supply. They feed and then move on, leaving each reef a little poorer for their passing. The blubber jelly voyages at the whim of wind and tide, feeding on plankton as it drifts. Billowing in the currents, it's an occasional visitor to the reef. Like all jellyfish, it's a free-living relative of the unmoving corals on the reef below. Building on the skeletons of others, hard corals extract calcium from seawater. Tiny polyps toil in limestone to craft their biological works of art. From the hard coral foundation has arisen a rambling architecture. This ever-expanding labyrinth has another dimension. It creates living space for related corals. Bold against blue, lace-like gorgonians strain against the current. On the reef slope, soft corals sweep the same current. Their flexible arms house polyps, but unlike hard corals, these are no reef builders. Lacking a solid skeleton, they draw support from tiny limestone spines within their tissues. When the soft coral dies, it disappears, leaving no lasting monument. Reef plants appear to be just as ephemeral, but their role is fundamental. All capture energy from sunlight. Some also contribute to the reef structure. The brittle green halimeda is mainly limestone. It constantly sheds gritty flakes into the lagoon. The stony skin of pink coralline algae glues the limestone blocks of the reef together. Filamentous algae seems little more than a green fur on rocks, but it's the pasture of the reef and essential to all the reef's grazers. But the ties that bind algae and the reef together go deeper. Like algae, hard corals also require sunlight to grow. This is a clue to an intimate relationship that literally fuels the reef. Corals are twin-engined. They're animals that have harnessed the power of plants to build the vast and elaborate limestone structures we call the reef. How have they done it? Somewhere in their evolutionary past, corals struck a deal with microscopic single-celled algae called zooxanthellae. The algae sheltered inside the polyp tissue, producing sugars from sunlight and recycling coral waste products. This partnership became a most powerful evolutionary achievement. Between them, they built reefs. It's not until the sun sets that coral's second, animal engine is revealed. As darkness falls, plankton begins its nightly ascent into the waters surrounding the reef. From their stony lairs emerge the polyps. Wreathed with stinging tentacles, each polyp is poised to reap a grisly harvest. Other members of the night shift emerge to feed. Feather stars take up strategic positions in the current. They sieve plankton and particles with their arms. Slender prey, a formation of razorfish, expertly mimic the harp coral that hides their knife-like bodies. A chaotic ball of eel-tailed catfish swarms in mid-water between feeding. Lagoon sands below them are loaded with hidden delicacies. These miniature catfish scout for their supper in rank and file, aided by sensitive chin whiskers. Lagoon sediments provide dainty pickings for the feather-mouthed sea cucumber. Little more than an elastic tube filled with water, it delicately wipes each feathered finger across its mouth, collecting food along with the sand. More robust sea cucumbers have rubbery bodies that make them unpalatable to predators. They continue their slow work of shunting sediment day and night and have no need to hide. Unlike the sophisticates of the night shift. A hunter by night, an octopus is able to change both color and texture. Hiding and bluffing, this stealthy camouflage expert is both actor and magician. Its relative, the cuttlefish, shares the octopus' talent for lightning color change. Shunning camouflage altogether, the flamboyant Spanish dancer flounces through the night. Its colorful costume is a signal to predators. Like other nudibranchs or sea slugs, the Spanish dancer looks much better than it tastes. Overcome by darkness, parrotfish retire into the fabric of the reef. Some of these daytime dandies sleep in a gossamer cocoon of their own weaving. Perhaps this mucus bubble disguises their scent to unwelcome visitors. A fast-moving vegetarian, the parrotfish grazes algae with its bird-like beak. Clownfish may be left out in the dark when their protective anemone shuts up for the night. This is the reef's best-known example of shared lives. The reef is a multi-layered organization, and its inhabitants have perfected the art of living on and in each other. Liaisons are everywhere, but some may be hard to find. An ornamented anemone harbors color-coordinated shrimp. Competition for the reef's limited resources is tough. When citizens live together, there are winners and losers. The blood-sucking fish louse has a one-way relationship with its suffering host. Even corals are not exempt from exploitation by others. Down among the valleys of the polyps lies another world, a world that's never been seen. Among the heaving tissues of the polyp live flatworms the size of a pinhead. Living on the thin veneer of the coral's mucus, these tiny lodgers appear to do no harm, gliding like magic carpets in a world of altered reality. On the reef, every opportunity has been investigated. Space is at a premium, and overcrowding a fact of life. Invariably, property disputes develop and borders are drawn. Where two different species meet, encounters can be nasty. Nightly space wars, fought by special stinging tentacles, leave a conspicuous white scar of conflict. Surrounded, this fatal siege may last months. A plate coral spreads outward to meet itself. Here, the problem is resolved by a small fence of self-recognition. Over time, this living carpet evolves. Territorial struggles shape the reef as a multitude of species vie for position. Shading its competitors from light, the fast-growing plate corals borrow a strategy from the forest canopy. Other inhabitants can neither outgrow nor outsting their competitors. For sponges, chemical warfare is the way. Their tissues are loaded with toxins, a kind of natural anti-fouling that preserves their space. Just as space invaders are part of life, so too are space makers. Sometimes an opening comes by chance. Storms and ocean swells damage the reef, tearing long-lived corals from their foundations. But not all space is created by the elements. The crown-of-thorns starfish, a coral predator, opens up new territory with each meal. And new settlers are in ready supply. Out of the blue curtain of distance, the currents propel a sea full of eager immigrants, a multitude of microscopic larvae. This humble being, covered with beating hairs, is the beginning of a new coral. Equally disguised, a larval sea urchin is a long way from its final form. Even the giant clam begins life microscopically. All reef larvae are designed to voyage in the plankton. To become citizens of a reef, they will need to take on their adult form, but first, they must find a safe place to settle. Journeying day and night, they may stumble upon a reef, a sentinel in the dark sea. But their sanctuary, is in fact a snare. Night has unmasked the reef. Poised and armed, it has become a waiting wall of mouths. The graceful Gorgonian is now a web of death, its animal nature revealed. Thousands of tiny polyps wait outstretched. A feather star sways in the gathering storm. A million mouths wait in silence for the microscopic voyagers to blunder their way into outstretched arms. The weaponry of the reef is revealed, a sinister array of traps, sieves, harpoons, and clutching tentacles. The methods may vary, but the final sentence will always be the same. And night after night, this random microscopic rain falls. Millions of epic voyages end in tiny but titanic struggles. Despite huge losses, some larvae survive their perilous voyage and settle. They grow to become solid citizens of the reef, joining the wall of mouths and waging space wars with each other. This endless lottery of settlement and survival weaves a visual tapestry of species, color, pattern, and form. But beauty and harmony is a mask. It hides chaos and competition. Reef society is shaped in a war zone of relentless conflict. The reef thrives in adversity, prospering despite its internal struggles. But reefs have also endured struggles of planetary dimension over enormous geological time. Through the millennia, continents drift, climates change, sea levels rise and fall. As the world moves around them, coral reefs remain, as always, immobile. They seem at the mercy of geology, yet today's reefs have somehow survived 240 million years of global upheaval. Coral reefs rim continental shelves and cap volcanic seamounts throughout tropical oceans. But once, reefs lived in an ancient sea called the Tethys. It lay between two supercontinents, which split apart, causing Africa and India to drift northwards. The broad Tethys Sea, evolutionary home of modern reef animals, was squeezed out of existence. Over millions of years, it became a war zone of continental collision, earthquakes, and sea level change. And the animals evolving here came under siege. Amidst the shunting continents, reef life had two choices: extinction or escape. Today's reefs are built by immobile creatures that somehow dispersed and evolved from their ancestral communities in the Tethys. But to escape the ravages of geology, they had to play an evolutionary ace. This ace not only allowed them to move, but to change. It was sex. And every summer, the age-old ritual unfolds. Shoals of tiny fry appear with their parents, the spiny chromis. Their behavior is unusual among reef fish. They guard their growing offspring. A female cuttlefish holds an egg daintily in her tentacles. She